The NFL's third all-time leading rusher, Frank Gore, is retiring from the league. Frank Gore says he plans to sign a one-day contract with the San Francisco 49ers, the same team that drafted him back in the year 2005. In a quote, Frank Gore said, "We're still trying to figure out when I'm going to do my one-day contract to sign to do my retirement." And he said he offered the timeline of a couple of months. That is interesting. Maybe there's some cap stuff that San Francisco have to work out. I don't get it, but whatever. Cool. Either way, Frank Gore is retiring from the NFL. Again, third all-time leading rusher from the NFL. And I feel like nobody's noticed. And that's I don't want to say sad part, because Frank Gore has made a lot of money. His legacy is known to anyone who's been paying attention to football over the past almost 20 years. The dude's a legend. Frank Gore is a legend of this game. He is a legend of the industry. He is a legend in sports, and he should be remembered as that. This is the guy who, at the age of 37, was starting games in the NFL and being actually a fairly productive running back. Last time we saw him, he was rushing. He was, I think, in 2020 with the New York Jets. He had a little over 600 yards, and was still averaging well above 3 yards a carry. So it wasn't like, he was on the deep decline, right? He was being a productive running back, and that's what he was. Frank Gore was productive every single year he was in the league. Whatever role he was in, whether he was the bulk carrying starter in San Francisco, or whether he was kind of like a secondary guy in the rotation in Buffalo, he was still one of the top guys top running backs on every single team that he was on. And when you look at what he's done in the NFL, 16,000 yards. By the way, how impressive is it that Frank Gore was able to hit exactly 16,000 rushing yards for his career? Exactly on the number. I think, honestly, that might play a little bit into why he retired. He might have just been like, oh, man, 16,000. No one's ever going to do that in NFL history. People are going to remember how many yards exactly I had. So, might as well. It's a good way to go out, right? He retires with 16,000 yards, 81 touchdowns, 4.3 yards per carry, nearly 4,000 yards receiving, the 18 receiving touchdowns as well. Frank Gore, absolute legend. And again, it's one of those things that nobody noticed, because he kind of did it quietly, especially after he left San Francisco. He had a few seasons in Indy. He did a stint in Miami for a year. He did a stint in Buffalo for a year. He did a stint in New York for a year. He did a fight with Darren Williams in his off year last year, because he wanted to, not because he didn't want to play in the NFL. He got NFL offers actually to play last year, but he said no to those because he wanted to do that fight with Darren Williams, which was really cool. And look, third all-time leading rusher. The only people in NFL history who have more rushing yards than Frank Gore are, of course, the number one leading rusher of all time, Emmitt Smith, and, of course, Walter Payton. He's fifth in all-purpose scrimmage yards. He's a Hall of Famer. Frank Gore is a first-ballot Hall of Famer, if I've ever seen one. If there's ever talk about Frank Gore maybe having to wait a year, no. If I've ever seen a first-ballot Hall of Famer, it is the person who retired with third all-time leading rushing. It's a person who did it until the age of 37. It's a person who was still rushing for over 600 yards at the age of 37. It's a dude who, for his career, think about this. Frank Gore's been around since 2005, right? For his career, Frank Gore's had what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 seasons of over 900 yards rushing. 11 seasons of doing that, and he was still getting offers up until last year. That's how much NFL teams thought of him. Whether he was just going to be another guy in a rotation, I promise you this. If Frank Gore played last year, he would have had at least 500 yards rushing and averaged at least 3.5 yards per carry, because that's how well he's taking care of himself. That's how committed he is to playing the game. That's how just undeniable the talent of Frank Gore is. And I remember, man, Frank Gore in San Francisco used to run through people. It was him and Steven Jackson for the Rams. In that era of running backs, they used to just run right through people. And then he was a brick house, and he still was a brick house up until the end, man. So big shout out to Frank Gore. Happy retirement. Can't wait to see what you do next, man. And a Hall of Famer for sure. Let me know what you guys think about his retirement in the comment section below. Hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released.